With us this morning is Dr. Wendelyn Inman. She's with us from TSU, professor there of public health, former chief of staff for the Department of Epidemiology with the state of Tennessee. This woman really knows her stuff, and I know she's been looking at this when it comes to public policy and health, doctor. This is, in your wheelhouse. As you look at where we stand right now, ma'am, what do you think the prospects are for schools reopening this fall?
I think it's very reasonable to expect schools to open this fall. Some things in place that protects families, especially their interactions. Some of those would be reduced and some of those could be the same, but we're going to see changes no matter what. Whether you're in kindergarten or whether you're in college, you're going to see some changes in the classroom.
Okay, and some of the video is freezing up, but we can hear your audio, so we're going to stay with this, and your lighting, you look great. Thank you for joining us. All right, let's get some specifics. All right, you're at TSU. I have a son who's going to go to University of Tennessee. A lot of students are going to the dorms. We heard MTSU the other day making an announcement about how they're going to limit, the capacity in a lot of the dormitories. In terms of social distancing, I just think about lecture courses, and I think about dormitories and the cafeterias. And I just wonder, when you say we're going to handle that in a phased-in way, how do you do that? Will they have head counts and try to separate when people eat and separate dorms by rooms? How are they going to do that?
What we have to have is flexibility. There are some students who can easily work remotely and learn remotely, and there's some students who cannot. And so you have to take that into account. And so you take into account the students that you have to let come back and have to let learn in a different kind of way and protect them in that environment. So they're going to be moving around, eating, living, working, and playing. And so you have to retrain them or train them on how to do that successfully during a pandemic. So wear your face mask, washing your hands, keeping the social distancing can all be implemented in the school, in educational systems. And so we have kind of a hybrid mix of students, some doing remotely and keeping them in touch with their instructors and with the system, and some on site. Even those on site could do some remote educational things such as Zoom. You may be on campus, but you may be virtually in the classroom with other students from around the country and even from around the world. K through 12 is going to be a little bit harder, but it's going to be okay for, I think higher education is going to be able to have a little bit more flexibility.
No, I agree. And let's stay on higher education. Then I want to ask you for K through 12. First of all, you're right. I think a lot of the lecture courses, they can be done online. As you advance, you become a junior and senior, you get into those courses where it's more lab work and maybe more hands-on. So that maybe is what you're referencing. Do you imagine college campuses then will be mandating that students, when they're on campus, wear masks?
Absolutely. I think that should be a priority for all of them. It's really just a short term. Any pandemic, if we take the right precautions, we can shorten it. And so in doing this, everybody has to realize that they are a place that we stop the infection. So by wearing our face masks, by washing our hands, by keeping our social distance, we're all a part of the solution.
With regard to athletics, you see already some of the major universities had invited back some of their football teams, and there already was a report out of the University of Houston and one out of the University of Texas where several of the players became infected with COVID. Not exactly sure where necessarily, if it was on campus, but that's basically shut down the program for the moment. We saw Columbia High School here in Columbia just having an issue where a student tested positive. They've shut down practice until sometime later in July for those summer drills. What about sports, especially where close contact really is unavoidable?
Yeah, sports are going to be something special that we have to handle. And I think they're doing absolutely correctly. They're monitoring the cases. So if you've got pockets of or incidents or new cases, that's what you've got to watch for. So I think with athletics, they can do the same things that we do. You can't really do a lot in some sports like a basketball, but like football, students wear helmets, and face shields are easy to make a part of that, and even to make it a part of practice. So you may have to go a little bit above board for some of the sports. Some may be delayed, but I think a lot of them, if they're creative, can be instituted.
Do you believe that, for instance, TSU's football team will start its season on schedule, as reflective maybe of the rest of the teams in the state?
Now, I'm not assigned to that,
okay,
but I don't see any reason why using preventative measures, students and athletes can't report for some training, not as extensive as they have in the past, but I think that would be something that could be implemented.
Okay, and let's go then more to the K through 12. And a lot of it may come down to convincing parents how they feel. I mean, if you had a child that was about to go back to high school and maybe played on the football team, would you feel comfortable with him going back, attending courses in a high school right now, and playing football?
I would be concerned if the school had no things implemented to protect people. I would certainly be comfortable if I have grandchildren. If my grandchildren were going back to school and students wore face masks and they had hand sanitizing stations and they had a little bit more implemented of, you can't in a classroom with 45 students do social distancing like we want, but you can do different kinds, just like learning how to do fire drills. Mm-hmm. We learn how to function in a pandemic in a different way for K through 12. Yes, it can be done.
Can be done.
The other things are that you have to remember, when you do have a sick child, there's so many other parameters. Where does that sick child go? What parent has to stay at home? You know, parents are getting back to work, and then you want to be sure that they have the resources they need.
So when they do come back, and as you've said, I think maybe it'll be in phases with these precautions in place. I imagine, though, the health experts are going to have to be watching really close. So if they go back and for whatever reason it's not working, or you start getting widespread spikes in children, becoming infected with COVID, you're just going to have to roll with it when that occurs. And potentially that means, as we've seen sometimes in the past, when flu becomes so great and so many kids are out, they just close down the schools. Is that what it could come back to?
Yes, it could. If you have some serious spikes, you should close school systems. But one of the things that we do know is if we do it in a widespread manner, we can shorten the time that we have to be closed. So if some schools closed and some don't, you're going to have like rolling implementation. That's not going to work. It almost has to be statewide or nationwide in some instances for the whole region. It's that those little pockets of, we are so interactive in our communities now that we have to look at the bigger picture. So while it may be 2 weeks for a whole state or 30 days for a whole nation, at least it would be over. And that's what we have experience from. When we're looking at infectious disease control, we're looking at breaking a cycle of infection. And COVID-19 is a part of that we have to really be serious about looking at. So schools can institute a lot of things, monitor the cases really, really closely, and reinforce those things that prevent transmission of any disease.